This broadcast has been brought to you by friends and partners of Alfano Ministries International. Thank you for partnering with us today. All right, well, welcome everybody to the 7K Revelation podcast. This is your host, Marc Alfano, and I am so excited for this podcast today. You know, each podcast that we do, the interviews get better and better, and I get more and more golden nuggets out of each and every one of them. And so this one here I'm super excited about because the whole idea of this broadcast is really two things. It's kingdom minded people, whether they're in ministry or just in the business realm or both, you know, and so the whole idea is to reveal the 7,000, which I'm going to go into that in a second. But before I do that, I'm going to bring up our guests today. I'm going to add them to the stage. We have John and Shiree Seeds. And listen, you guys are going to be blown away by the testimony that they have and also what God has been doing with them in the business realm. And before I turn things over to them, I want to just share two things. One is the idea behind the broadcast really is to reveal the 7,000. And people ask me, what does that mean? Well, if you go to Romans 11:3 and 5, it says this is Elijah talking to God. And how many of you ever been there where you're asking God these questions like, hey, am I the only one left? You know, where is everyone, right? Have they killed all your prophets, you know? And I love this because it says, and do you remember what God said? He said, no, I have 7,000 others who've never bowed the knee to Baal. And so there's so many people out there who are kingdom-minded, they're business-minded people, and they have an amazing story to tell, but they don't really have an opportunity to get to share it that often. And so that's what we're doing. And then the other thing is the Lord gave me the scripture that they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And so we always like to start these broadcasts out with a person's testimony because their testimony is going to help you, the listener, to overcome obstacles in your own personal life. So welcome to the broadcast. It's good to have you on here today, John.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank
you. It's so
we're
good.
Happy to be here.
And I think you nailed it right there. I mean, that's been kind of like our experience too. I mean, we've had an incredible testimony happen and just very limited, if not shut down, but just very limited to be able to share it with other people. And this is really, I think, going to be one of the first times that we're able to actually share our complete testimony since God told us to move to Florida. So
wow. All right. Well, let's start. I always like to have my flow really goes from BC days. So let's talk about you guys before Christ. And then we'll go into your redemption, you know, like what that looks like. And then we'll talk about your present and future and things like that. So let's hear about your story, what brought you to the Lord. And you guys, flow in the Holy Ghost. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
You go first, guys.
So Lord, just give us the wisdom. Let us share what you want to share. And basically, I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska. I left Michigan in 91 with the hopes and dreams to make enough to buy my fuel for my private pilot's license. And I didn't return from Alaska until 29 years later. So I went up for a summer. During that time, I had dropped out of Olivet Nazarene College on a full ride scholarship for nursing. I was in the nursing program, in the ROTC program, got fed and sick and tired of religion. And I just thought, there's got to be more than this. And I didn't realize that I was pinning my hopes on man. And yet I just really felt so lost in my life. And I finished my obligation to the ROTC program in the United States Army, 82nd Airborne. Moved to Alaska in 91, commercial fisherman in small town, Petersburg, Alaska. And this is where I met my wife. Total heathen. I had been sick and tired of religion so much to the point where I thought, well, God, if you're real, you know who I am. And honestly, I've got like 5 or 6 different times where I probably should have been dead, either by wolf, bears, or the sea. And each one time, I distinctly remember saying Jesus and deliverance. And especially during the boat when I was out fishing by myself in a storm. I got a emergency call that she was having a miscarriage, and I was trying to get back, and it was 6-foot seas on my own boat, and I was halfway across Clarence Straits on my way into the port at Ketchikan, where the boat capsized because a stabilizing pole came loose, and I was inside the cabin, and the cabin door slid shut, and there's no way for me to get out. And I just said, Jesus, help me. And then suddenly the stabilizer pole broke, the boat righted itself, and the door opened. And once I got to Ketchikan, I immediately put the boat up for sale and just flew home, and flew home to see my wife, who was having basically bleeding out in an emergency room from a miscarriage. So that's just one of the experiences. Drinker, just not even going to church, just doing my own thing, and until 2002, 2003, our marriage is on the rocks. We actually got divorced, and I actually moved back to Michigan, just totally lost
with our son.
Totally had an experience with the Lord that was beyond the religion that I had. And during that process, unbeknownst to me, Shiree had a similar experience in her own life back in Alaska. And we got back together, decided to try to work things out to see if maybe we could, salvage our marriage. Fast forward in Ketchikan, Alaska, Shiree feels like she's going to go to nursing school. I moved to Ketchikan with her, leave the commercial fishing industry after 12 years. And during that process, we landed at what was the
First Assembly?
The First Assembly of God at the top of Jackson Street in Ketchikan, Alaska. And we actually, Pastor Terry Bonner, who is now in Washington, actually we got remarried we went to the courthouse on Valentine's Day, and after receiving the Lord, and then he married us during the church service on
on a Sunday, and it was actually the sermon was on restoration.
And so he used asked to use our marriage as part of our restoration service. And I got to tell you, that's the wedding we refer back to, even though we were married in Petersburg, Alaska, back in, I'm going to say crazy years of 2008. I almost said 1998. That was like 10 years before. But yeah, so I mean, totally restored. And then fast forward, I mean, is there anything?
Yeah. No, that's your testimony. That's your part.
That's my part.
Yeah. Me, I'm just a girl from Petersburg, Alaska, born and raised in a town of 3,000 people. The only way on and off that island is either by boat or ferry. So grew up in a really sheltered life, didn't know what it was like to take a risk, to leap out and, an adventure or anything like that. But was raised in the Assembly of God Church with my aunt, really. My dad was raised Catholic, and he had a really bad experience with religion. And so he made sure that the only time we went to church was at Christmas time. So, really from a really young point in my life, I remember going to the Catholic church with my dad, and they were taking communion. And I think I was like probably around 4 or 5. And he said, he went up for communion. And I go, well, I want to go. And he goes, no, you can't. And I thought right then and there in my mind, I remember, well, this is not right. I never want to be a part of this church, because why can't I have communion? Why can't I have what everybody else is having with the Lord and stuff like that? So I was very attracted to the Lord all my life, and raised in the Assembly of God with my aunt, because like I said, my dad was just had a really bad taste of religion, and he knew that's not what he wanted. But even in the Assemblies of God, when growing up, all I knew was religion. So, past the divorce, moving into Ketchikan was really my first encounter with the Lord, John, like even when we moved to Ketchikan, we hadn't remarried at that point at the beginning. And I remember, going through that whole process, like, Lord, if you're real, like, what's going on? And I remember the Sunday, Sunday morning, it's when everybody has their fights and then they put their mask on, they say, right? So John and I had gotten in a really bad fight, and I thought, you know what, you can just stay here and be a poo, whatever. The kids and I are going to church. And so we went to church, and that morning changed my life, because there was an evangelist, Nancy Haney, who came, and she was talking, and the Lord called me out that day. And I'll never forget it, because it's like when the Lord calls you, there's no mistake, right? And so I tried to hide in the back of the church, sit in the back. I don't know why. I always liked the back. But sitting in the back of the church, and had the kids sitting there with me, and they kept calling. They didn't specifically call my name, but they were saying, they called out everything that I had experienced in my life. And I was just like, oh, surely there's other women here that he's talking about. But it was weird, because I had there was 4 people I remember just kind of turned their head and were looking at me, and they wouldn't stop staring at me. And I was like, okay, fine, it's me. So I go up there, and after there was probably 20 women, I was the last one up there. And when they came and laid hands on me, she laid hands on me. She goes, it's you. He's the one that, he's been waiting for you. Mm-hmm. So that point changed my life around. And up until that point, when we got married originally, kind of backtrack a little bit. When we got married originally, I was young. I was 18. We'd already had our first son. So I didn't really do anything, and so I was always like, what am I going to do with my life? And you grow up in a small town, small-minded. So a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, all that stuff. I never did drugs, but did a lot of drinking, because I thought I was missing out on life, right? Adventure in life. And that's what Petersburg was about. It was about fishing and drinking, and that's what they're known for. It's a
little drinking town with a fishing problem.
Yep,
yeah.
Quaint drinking town with a fishing problem. And so, went through all of that stuff, and then fast forward to Ketchikan. So I really came out of, when we say we got divorced, we divorced our old life. And that was the one thing. When we got divorced, I can tell you, we went out to lunch afterwards together, and we were just like, why I'm like, at that point, how did we let it get this far? Because we were so in love, and everything, like, it was like, how could John and Shiree ever get divorced? That's what the whole town thought of. And then fast forward to that. So coming out of drinking and just bad choices after bad choices, when the Lord called me, it was very significant. And it was that point in my life that I'll never forget, and I've never turned back. And so when we share our testimony with other people, I was so excited to share my testimony. My dad would tell me, don't tell people that, because, we lived in a small town. He's like, not everybody needs to know your garbage. And so, but to me, it was a beautiful thing to be able to give your heart and surrender finally to the Lord. And so from there, it's just been one thing after another. We went from Ketchikan to we went from religion to relationship. Ketchikan was a turning point for us, I believe, from religion to relationship. And so that was it. That was a huge thing. And we've never looked back since then. And, the Lord restored our marriage, because up to that point, John was saying, like, I even asked him, I remember a time I went and saved all of our, money that I had to buy him a ring. And I asked him to marry me. And he literally got up. This was before that encounter. He got up and walked out of the restaurant and said no. And I was like, what? How can you tell me no? And it was pretty funny, because at that point, I really hadn't surrendered. I was still living that same life. But once I gave my life back to the Lord and started developing that relationship, that's when everything turned around in our marriage. And it's as if, I tell people, it's as if that life those people never existed. So when we gave our heart and really truly surrendered to the Lord, those people, that whatever that destroyed our marriage in the beginning, it's not there. It doesn't exist anymore. We are not those people. And so it was a pretty amazing.
Yeah.
our marriage alone is just an amazing testimony, and the restoration of our marriage, and the fact that the Lord can take something and, so that message that we tell people, once you give your heart to the Lord, all that past life is never there. That's why people can go from drug addicted, whatever, and when they really truly surrender their heart to the Lord, it can change just like that. And the forgiveness is just amazing. So when we have arguments, because we still do, we're still married.
What? No, it's been all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. I mean, I don't understand.
There's no finger pointing. You were to the past where you did this to me, you did that. All of that is gone. And so,
and you learn to grow as you surrender that, like we hear a lot at the river, and Dr. Rodney says, the problem with the living sacrifice is that it will crawl off the altar. And so, God's so faithful, and even in that was 2004 when we moved to Ketchikan, in 2005 or 6 when we got remarried, and all along the way, just the growth from moving from Southeast Alaska, which is to 1,000 miles north, to Wasilla, Alaska, Anchorage area, to the churches that we were there in, and just learning more about God, but still just but we were leaning too heavy on the church to live our life or tell us how our life could be lived only, not really personalizing it. And I've got to say, I think just going back to Ketchikan in 1992, 91, 92, when I moved there to commercial fish, I think I do remember something about Dr. Rodney Howard Brown visiting there. I didn't remember a name, but that was pricked in my mind there. But now up to Wasilla, to where we're remarried,
having children, have a dream,
both
have
careers,
vision, and
working for the state of Alaska. She was in a nurse. I was flying out to the villages. There's probably not too many places in Alaska, in the Southeast Panhandle, the Aleutian Chains, and the interior villages all the way up to the North Slope that we haven't been. I've been in almost every island and every village for work or commercial fishing, and then our daughter Maren, and she was born with special needs. She has what they call oral facial digital syndrome type 2, right?
Type 1.
And which means there was something happened. She had a VP shunt placed at 6 months in Seattle Children's Hospital. And for the next, for her entire adult life, from that point on, we were 2 trips a year down to Seattle Children's Hospital for checkups and surgeries and whatnot. In 2014, there was a failure in the shunt that caused irreversible damage to her optic nerve and her auditory nerve. So she was blind on her right side and deaf in her left ear. Wow. And we had to advocate hard because the doctors weren't going to do anything about it. They just thought it was part of it. No. And at that time we had really just prayed, and we actually had them, and they took the corrective action and replaced the shunt for her. But at that time,
there was already damage done to her optic nerve and her auditory nerve. So they said that there was nothing that they could do. And she was losing her sight and losing her hearing. And so
losing control, we could see it really changing her because it would freak her out. She had her left eye was her only good eye. So she would always turn her head to look with her left eye. If her left eye got covered, she would freak out. And I thought, I remember praying church one day saying, Lord, she's got enough going on. She doesn't need this. I said, there's got to be something more. And I think it was 2014 where we first experienced a young traveling evangelist by the name of Jonathan Shuttlesworth. He came up to
our church.
Yeah, and that was something
we had never experienced.
We've never experienced someone in relationship or with that fire, that passion. That's just at that point, I think it really kind of got us thinking. Then Dr. Debbie Rich came to the church right after.
And when Debbie Rich came to the church, that in Maren, that's kind of I think 2015 or something like that. I don't remember the exact years, but the one thing that I recall is we were sitting in church service and she did an altar call, and Marin was so adamant about going up there. And so how do you hold that? How do you refrain them back? You're like, at this point, I don't care if you understand or not. She had it's something, and she would not, like, I tried to make her sit down. She's like, no. And she would scream. So I was just like, okay. So I just let her go. And so when she went up to the front, no adults came at all, but all of the children came to that altar call that night. And that was the first time Marin had ever given on her very own. She gave her heart to the Lord. And because of that, there were lots of other little kids that it's like all the kids were just drawn. No adult went up there. It was all children. And so that is when we've got, we're like, okay, there's more to
So there is more.
There's more.
So there is more.
There's more than what's going on that we just see going to church on Sunday and Wednesday night and just going through. So, we got out of religion, back into religion all over again. And, we wanted to be a part of the church. We wanted to be leaders. We wanted not just for the sake of leadership, but to help, because we knew that there was a dying and a hurting world outside those walls.
And how do we share that?
And how did we do that? So we didn't really start understanding that until Jonathan came and Debbie came and all of that. And so that was such an eye opener for us. And fast forward, I was out, like John was saying, we were all in, the villages and all over. I was a nurse for special needs children and terminally ill children. And I would fly out of Anchorage to Bethel, Alaska on a 747. And then every day for like a week, every quarter, I would fly out to the little villages and small planes, like the Cessnas and stuff like that. And anyways, you talk about, the Dr. Rodney always tells us, do only what the Holy Spirit tells you to do, nothing more, nothing less, right? So I'm just learning about all this stuff. Didn't really know what I didn't know. And I hear this, we're getting ready. It's 2011. We're getting ready to we finally have a little bit of money. Sheree's working as a nurse. John's got a great job. Because I don't know, a lot of people don't understand that fishing is feast or famine, right? So you don't really have a lot of money. To say the least. So when you have a nurse, and a lot of nurses are married to fishermen, because at least the nursing is stable income. But anyhow, so we finally are gearing up for our first big trip ever. John hadn't seen his family. He's from Michigan, in probably, 10, 15 years. And so did this huge reunion all ready to go to Florida. And so I was working like crazy. I was trying to get out of flying back and forth in the villages and getting ready to make a different step in my career. But this was my last stint in the villages, and you have everything planned out, and everything just kind of fell apart. And so I was like, no, they say, try not to do anything in the flesh, but I made it happen. I was like, no, we're going. I gotta do this trip. And so I get to Bethel.
Were you told not to go?
I get to Bethel, and everybody, usually when you go out into the villages, I would have to go with another Native person to the villages, so that they would be kind of like my representative, right? My coworker or whatever. And so anyhow, long story short, I get there and she's like, oh, I can't go. And I'm like, and I make it happen, right? And inside I'm hearing, just cancel the trip. As soon as I get to Bethel, I hear, cancel the trip. But I was like, no, that's just me being a baby. I'm not going to cancel this trip. I'm going to push through. And so made everything happen. Fast forward that night, we get to the village. I go see the families. A storm comes in, and it's in November. A storm comes in, and I said, you know what? We're just going to pray that this storm goes away. And so the storm goes, because we don't want to get stuck in the village. If you get stuck in the village, you have to sleep on the floor. And I mean, we're talking like honey buckets. Ever heard of honey buckets?
Third world.
No running water.
Second world.
No sewer, no nothing. Who wants to get stuck out there? And so anyhow, we pray. The storm stops. A plane comes in, and I, with my job, could fly on any airlines. And there's all kinds of airlines that come in and out of there. But because my coworker could not, she begged me, she goes, please stay. And I hear this still small voice, still not recognizing it's the Lord, hear this voice saying, just go, just go, take that flight and go. It's going to be okay. But I'm like, no, I can't leave her, you know? So I stay. Another flight comes in, one that we can all take. And I will tell you, when it flew in, we were so excited. Well, the plane lands, and what ends up happening is we end up in a plane wreck. So as we loaded the plane, I usually like to sit in the back because I'm always thinking, why would I want to sit in the front? If the plane crashes, I don't want to be the first one to die, right? Well, there's an elderly man who's like in his 70s, and he's like, please, can I sit in the back? And I was like, of course, got to be respectful. I'm like, of course. So guess where I get to sit? I get to sit in the co-pilot seat. I was like, not cool. I do not want to do this. So the plane goes to take off. The pilot is a little bit like on edge. That should have been my first clue. Well, then we get up in the air, and I kind of close my eyes and I just try to sleep because I don't like to fly. But we get up in the air, and I hear the Lord, and he said, open your eyes. And I open my eyes and I look over, and the pilot is literally all of his veins on his hand is popping out because he's trying to correct and pull the yoke over. And I looked at him, I said, what's going on? And he goes, we're going down. And I was just like, I didn't know what to think. Up to that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I hear the Lord say, cover your head, move your legs, cover your head. I did that. And the next thing I remember is, it's in November, there's snow, but the only thing that I remember, I closed my eyes, and all I could remember is
peace.
Try not to cry. It's just such peace and joy.
And so she wakes up, and I get this phone call from my wife.
No. Wow. Let me finish it.
Yeah.
So peace and joy, and all I see is I was brought back to a time when I was like going sledding down the hill with my dad, and I was up to that point in my life, I was so scared of death, always fearful what would happen if, what would happen to Marian, what would happen to my husband, and all these things, and what happened to my son. But at that moment, there was such joy and such peace, and I didn't have a care in the world. And so when that happened, I mean, I'm not crying because I'm anything, but it was just such a joy to have that peace when you're facing death. And anyhow, fast forward, I wake up, the plane crashes, it goes down, nose down, and then flips. So it rolled like 3 times. We ended up upside down, and I wake up, and there's just pitch black and just super quiet, like an eerie silence. And I look forward, and all I see is like this ember, and the plane was on fire. And so I'm trying to figure out what is, obviously I'm like all disoriented and everything. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. The pilot's gone. You couldn't even hear people breathing in the back. And there was a total of 4 more people on the back of the plane, and I couldn't hear anything. And all I could see was fire. So the only thing I could think of is I got to get out of here. Well, I look, finally the pilot comes over, opens his door, and I'm able to get out. Well, unbeknownst to me, I'm upside down. So I fall down and then get out of the plane. And then it's just pitch black, and I didn't know where to go. But I see this figure standing towards where the village was. And so I started running. And so I'm running towards this person who I think it's a person. But when I got there, there was nobody there. And she
was calling me on her cell phone.
Yeah, I found my cell phone. I call my husband, and I say, I think that I'm sounding like this. Hi, babe, it's me. I just want to let you know that I'm okay. I was in a plane crash, but I'm okay. And and then
no. It was broken. It was chaotic. It was like the plane crashed, and screaming. And I can't walk. Well, where are you? What do you mean the plane crashed? Where are you? She goes, I'm running away from the plane because it's on fire. I said, stop. You're in the middle of the Arctic tundra, where I've flown out to the same village to do work for the state of Alaska. We'd fly over herds of muskox, wolves. I mean, packs of 20, 30 wolves. And I told her, I said, stop. You cannot, don't run to a tree line. Don't run. don't go too far. She goes, no, the village, there's someone standing there. And it looks like we're not too far from the village. I said, well, okay, as long as you know where you're running to, stay on the phone. Don't hang up.
So the significance, after all of that plane wreck and all that, so that literally took me out. I broke my back. I ended up fracturing my my left leg, tearing muscles, all kinds of stuff. But through all of that, my biggest lesson was don't push open doors that God closes.
Yeah.
And I had learned from that experience, I no longer have that fear of death. Like, it was just amazing, right? So here I go from this scared, fearful girl who lives on an island, who's only very sheltered life, to experiencing this. And that was my biggest adventure in my life, was going to those villages. But to have an experience like that, live it, and to know that the Lord, so when Pastor Rodney says do only what the Holy Spirit tells you to do, nothing more, nothing less, you would think that I would have grasped it at that point in my life, but I have to say I didn't. I heard that my only thing was like, okay, just don't push open doors. So, fast forward to...
Let's stop a minute. Let's pause for a second. So that happened in 2011, Mark. So we told you about our daughter going blind and deaf in 2014. By that time, we had been in, Shiree had been through 2 different open back surgeries, rods and pins inserted. We actually ended up making the trip before we knew in 2011 to the family reunion in Florida. Before we even knew how extensive her injuries were, and then to come back and realize that actually, she probably had more than severe whiplash, broken back, and required surgery. So 2014, we're finally getting Shiree on the other side of the back surgeries and back on her feet.
Because up to that point, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to work again or do anything. Yeah. I couldn't walk. Mm-hmm. I couldn't stand. I couldn't lie down. I couldn't sit for longer than 20 minutes at a time. And that was my life for up until the last surgery, or even after the last surgery. And so I thought for sure my life was going to be lived in just pain. So I went from, literally I went from 60 to 0 in a moment. And that was my life. And so the Lord, we experienced, I just kept believing. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to believe that God is going to heal me. I'm not going to live my life on pain medication, nothing like that. And then that is when Jonathan and all those guys started coming. 2014.
Jonathan, Debbie Rich, 2015. Yeah. We get introduced to Tiff Shuttlesworth through our church, King's Chapel, in Wasilla, Alaska. And then during that time, we had actually come into like a little windfall settlement through insurance for the plane crash. And we think, okay, Lord, we don't know what to do. What do you want us to do? We were able for the first time to, this is where we learned about the seed time. And I don't know if it's really called seed time and harvest, but they called partnering with people. I remember as kind of like one of the first experiences we had in being able to give something that we thought we were able to sow into Tiff Shuttlesworth ministry that year in a significant way to where he was going to Guatemala.
Through him is where we learned that, what's the verse where it talks about, some sow, some reap, some but we learned
together we bring in the harvest.
Together we bring in the harvest. And so that is where we learned that seed time and harvest, God's word and that. Because up until that point, I thought if I wasn't helping people,
I think the very first thing we did when we received our little windfall and during all this stuff with Marin was we immediately tithed.
Yeah.
Immediately gave a gift on top of that. And then we immediately were able to sow into Tiff Shuttlesworth. And then we took a family vacation, paid off some bills. Yeah. And the very next year we were able to sow again in a larger amount into Jonathan Shuttlesworth back in the early days when he was going to Jersey City, when he was doing that crusade. So, and then in that fall again into his dad. And then I'll fast forward to 2017.
we're looking for a place. We're like, do we stay in Alaska? Do we go?
Yeah.
You know, and we had gone 2016. We're driving. We go to Michigan. We go to Florida.
We're looking for things to get out of Alaska.
John's 100%. You know, I'm an Alaskan girl. My whole family lives there. I'm all about family. And John is like, you know, backpacking $100 and I'm going to Alaska. That's his mentality.
That's what I did.
And he's Mr. Adventurer, and I'm like pulling back, so we balance each other out really well. But he's like, let's move, and I'm like, are you out of your mind? Wait, I'm like, are you out of your mind? We are not moving. Everything that we have for our daughter is here.
Yeah.
Like it's in Alaska, all of her medical. Even doctors have said, I've never seen such a well-resourced special needs child. Everything that we needed for her, all the care, all the medical covered, because we lived in Alaska, because we're native, all of this stuff. She's Alaskan native, totally support 100%. Right. So, and you know, John's like, why don't we move to Florida at that point? I'm like, no, I am not moving to Florida. There's hurricanes.
She said she would never move to Florida because there's too many bugs, too many snakes, too many hurricanes, and there's no way. She didn't feel like God. So a year later.
Yeah. Year later, God tells us to move.
So quick question is through this process, you know, you said that you heard the voice telling you not to go, right? And now you know, like, where do you just define resistance, you know, and the actual voice saying not to go? Because sometimes the enemy will come in and give us resistance towards something like that, you know, which sounds like what was happening with your Florida experience more than the Lord, you know. So when did you, like, for you personally, how do you now fine tune into the voice of God to know what you should do, what you shouldn't do? I don't mean to take you off track, but
no, that's good. It's a good point, because for me, it was an instant. Didn't even ask the Lord what he thought. I was like, there is no way I'm going. And I was just dead, put my foot down, didn't even ask the Lord, didn't even think to even include him in my decision making at all. And I was just very
no Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Yeah, there was nothing. It was just all Shiree, 100%. There's no way.
And it checked all the woman's boxes though in the flesh. You know what I mean? I'm protecting my kids. We're good. I've got security here. I'm safe. You know, and this is just too much unknown. And at that time, we really felt like in our church that we were actually receiving.
We arrived
outside help from like ministries like Debbie Rich and Evangelist Jonathan and his father, Evangelist Tiff, and our local church going through the hoops and serving and cleaning and helps and doing all this stuff, and until but still kind of like feeling something like we should be doing something different.
But that's how, you know, I really based it. There was such a fear there in me that for Marin, you know, my security and stuff like that, just a fear of not wanting to go. So that decision was not based. So how that decision was not based in that I even asked the Lord about it. So I just did it on my own. It was all out of flesh. And how do you discern that?
So to answer your question, I think it was like a year later that we learned that actually we could press in. We didn't need to wait for a prophetic word from an outside source. We could actually go to the word and get a word ourselves. I think we were tuning into the early days of Jonathan Shuttlesworth podcasts on YouTube and stuff like that, and following Tiff in addition, and then diving into the word ourselves. And I think it was one of those times where Shiree was having some alone time.
Because up to that point, we were so like, you know, it was really big on, we were in an atmosphere where it was all based off of your direction was given by a prophetic word. And that's how we were taught. And if you were chosen for the prophetic word, then, oh my gosh, you've totally arrived. And I was sitting there, and that's kind of like the culture of where we were. And when I was sitting there was one day I was sitting there and was just like, Lord, did you just totally forget about me? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. Like, why are you not talking to me? And I heard the Lord again. It's just all these times you hear, you think about it like the fingerprint of God and you just don't really know. And I hear his voice and it was calming. And he goes, you don't need a word from man. You have my word. You need a word from me. And so I started really just sitting down and just spending time with the Lord in his word. And at that point in my life, after going around all the US trying to find a place to live, I hear the Lord. This is what he tells me. Once Martin is healed, take her to Dr. Rodney Howard Brown, move to Florida, take her to Dr. Rodney Howard Brown's church, enroll her in the school of worship. And at that point in my life, I had never heard of Dr. Rodney Howard Brown in my life. Mm-hmm. Didn't even know the man existed. I had no clue. And then to even know that there was a university or anything, like the Lord told me all this. I'm like, all right, it's just me. So I do what all good Christians do. And I go and I Googled him. And so there I find Dr. Rodney Howard Brown. There's actually a Dr. Rodney Howard Brown, and there's actually a church, and he actually has a university. And so, at that point in my life, our house, we have no money because we spent all of our money remodeling the house. We did all our giving. We did all this stuff. And to kind of just give you a good insight, we had purchased with the money the windfall that we had, we purchased a house for my mom and dad. And up until that point in their life, they were essentially homeless. And so my mom, she was like, I had my parents there. Life is good. I have a good church family. Why would I want to move? My daughter's taken care of. But there was such a peace when I sat there and I learned, and I was just like, I was excited. And again, kind of behind when I told John, I was like, I will never move to Florida. You were out of your mind. And then probably a year later, that's when I got that word from the Lord. And I had such peace and I was excited. I was like, we are moving. And so I told the Lord, I was like, Lord, there's a couple things. One, if this is really, truly you, which I believe with all my heart of heart that it is, my husband's not going to kill me. And two, my mom, because like 4 days prior to this, she had just told me, I will never move from here. I don't care. I don't care what it is. I love my house. I will never move from here. And I said, and two, I can't leave my parents here. They have to come with us. So all of that, I tell my husband comes home and he just looks at me and he's like, all right, let's do it.
Well, I think too. And so at this time, we're still on the backside. Martin is still blind and deaf, and we're still pressing in. Mm-hmm. We're still sowing. We're still giving. We're still serving. But at the same time, we feel this like something's not right. There's more.
There's more. So we're looking this up together, and he says, "Oh my gosh, there's a conference. It's like next week. We gotta, faith looks like something. We got to put boots on ground." So mm-hmm. I was working, couldn't go. So he and Martin jump on a plane within 4 or 5 days. And they go to the conference in July.
I think there was like the
doesn't
summer.
Matter what it's called.
Yeah, the summer camp meeting
in July.
So we end up, Martin and I land like midweek in 2017. I was a dad with a special needs daughter. No family bathrooms. So the ladies of the church, I remember that's where we first met Veronique Justa and Pastor Joyce, and then Linda helped me with Mar, and I explained to, hey, she's special needs, she needs some help. I can't go into the women's bathroom, and at that time it was just the old bathrooms, But anyway, they helped me, and all during that week, I remember there was a very significant moment for Mar, to where at that time she was 17 years old, because she was born in 2000. And Dr. Rodney gave a call for people that felt called to go to school for worship. And I remember seeing my special needs 17-year-old daughter who
developmentally delayed.
You can understand what she says sometimes, but she can't write, and she can't
read, and
very little reading. She raises her hand. I thought, Marm, put your hand out. She goes, no, Dad, I have to do this. I said, okay. And she goes, I have to go alone. And I thought, okay. So against my better judgment, I let her go up to the front again alone, and she, and then Dr. Rodney, I remember someone following up with me later about the scholarship for her to go attend school. I said, well, she's special needs, she can't read or write. And I said that would be a miracle. And they said, sir, we're surrounded by miracles.
So let her come.
So that was my first experience. And they said, you know what? If you can, you should go to the healing school that starts Monday. And I thought, healing what? And they explained it to us. And so I talked it over with my wife. We had enough available. We got extended the hotel. And Martin and I experienced 2 weeks of healing school with Pastor PJ and DNA. And by that Thursday, Marin's healing.
Wow.
She could see and she could hear. And it was to the fact that where I covered her left eye, she didn't freak out. She could still see. It was Pastor PJ, DNA, and Pastor PJ's mom that, when you had your one-on-one and stuff like that. And they just, I had never experienced, a healing school. I thought, what is this going to be like? Yeah. It was just coming into agreement with the word of God. I thought, oh my word. Never been exposed to anything like that in my life. And we stayed for the 2 weeks, and I came home from Alaska and said, okay, we're moving. Started selling stuff. And
we started selling stuff, but you would think at that point we would have just packed up and left, right? No, it took us another 3 years because we finally told people at our church that we were leaving.
We tried to share Marin's testimony of healing and stuff like that, and it really wasn't
we were
that well
expecting
received.
Everyone to go, yay! And
it was just kind of like you went down to where, and Marin got healed, and she's like, yeah, and
we're gonna move, and total shunned.
Yeah,
it's like we never even existed.
Everything we would stay in Alaska for the church, our home, and all those doors started closing.
Everything.
And in 2018, we came down with came into agreement. My in-laws came into agreement with us that we would sell the property that we had given them as a home. They were okay with that. We would take that and go purchase a home down here in Florida. And so, at the worst part of the market in February of 2018, we sold our home. We sold that home property, paid off some debts, set aside a portion of money to put as a down payment on another rental property. Come down, look around for properties, can't find it, meet with Veronique Justa, and then we sign up to bring some friends with us down to the Spring Leaders and Ministers Conference, where the money that we had set aside, I said, okay, honey, let's talk about maybe instead of just giving out of emotion, let's ask the Lord what you would have us give. And she goes, that's fine, but you're not to touch that house money. Don't even think about it. And that's exactly what the Lord asked for. And
on day one, but he didn't
on day
say
one,
anything.
I told the Lord, I remember having this conversation with the Lord. You're going to have to tell her. She's your daughter. You're going to have to tell her, because she just specifically told me not to even think about touching that money. And that's exactly what you want. And I said, you know what? If you confirm it in her, I'm good.
So day 3 of the conference, I'm sitting there, and it was the only money that we had left to be able to put a down payment on a home and stuff like that. And and I was like, okay. And then we're just sitting there, and I'm in the service, and of course it's amazing because it
was the service where there's 300 millionaires. Raise your hand.
Yes. And so 300 millionaires.
We've always wanted to be in business.
And we've always wanted to have our own business. Up to that point, we have been trying different things and couldn't figure out how to do it. And then when we learned, like I said, we had just learned about what it was to be a sower into the end time harvest with Tiff and all that stuff. And we were 100%, so the Lord was moving us in that direction. And then when Dr. Rodney said that, my hand immediately shot up, and I was like, yes, I want to do this. I have to be a part of this. And then I also hear him say, sow your house money. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, Lord, whatever you want me to do. And it was no thing, but I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, my husband's going to like.
Pastor Eric's sitting there talking about, he comes up for the giving lesson and stuff. He goes, okay, on Thursday, we're going to have this special. So go ahead. If you have to go loose something up, go ahead, loose it.
And he spoke to me that morning at that service. And so we went in between services, got the rest of the money out of our account, got a check, and the teller, her name was Faith. And so we were just like, that's so funny. Like, we're gonna give this. And so we sowed it. We sowed it because we wanted something more than what we could do. And so fast forward after that, we're still trying to get to Florida. It still takes us a couple of years. We get here. There's like this urgency, right? And when you talk about like, how do you decipher it from the Lord and the enemy? Because sometimes he'll hold you back. Well, I experienced that. So as a home health nurse and I was actually elevated to a director, and I told my husband, like, we can't leave now. I'm a director of a home health agency. Like I got a raise, I got all this stuff. And then the Lord gives me a vision. And it's actually a dream. It was a dream. And it was a dream of John and I pushing wheelbarrows. And I heard the Lord very quickly say, how much longer are you going to continue building somebody else's kingdom? When are you going to start trusting me and building and helping me build my kingdom? Which kingdom do you want to build? And so I had that, and I told John, and John, I woke up the next morning and I told John about it, and he said, "You got to quit. You have to quit." Yeah, we have to go. And then the following week, I had another dream about, there was like this angel. It was like the angel off of Christmas tree, mm-hmm. but it was like this dream of this angel, and it had like there's like a table and a board that kind of like, have you ever seen the little marble things would like fall into the little, so it was like that. And I saw the table shift and the angel had touched it. And I heard the Lord say, there's going to be a transference of wealth, right? And now is the time. The time is coming to where there's going to be a transference of wealth. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like am I going crazy? But no, I mean, and then to come down and hear Pastor Rodney talk about, the multimillionaires and stuff like that. So that is, that's where it led to. And so when we finally, that was the summer that I was like, all right, we got to go. And then like 2 weeks later, John wakes up and he goes, if we're going to go, we have to go now. So it was 20.
Okay. So from 2018, we go home and we experience the closing of the doors in Alaska. 2019, we don't leave, but Shiree gets promoted, but there's still something going on. Shiree's getting dreams. So end of 2019, we're making plans or looking at things to do,
trying to figure out when to go,
like at business,
trying to plan it all out.
There's a call, but we have no understanding of timing and stuff like that, or like we should jump in faith. We think, oh no, God wants us. We have no idea. And so COVID, 3 weeks into January, COVID hits. And now it's just like, oh, and then Dr. Rodney gets arrested. So we're following everything.
From Alaska still.
And we just still feel this call. And it's just like, then we have this conversation of Shiree had that one final dream of a transfer shift and that we're building somebody else's kingdom. And in June and it's like May or June-ish, and we're thinking, God, we just got to go. But the Canadian borders are closed.
They weren't closed
during COVID since March. They didn't open it. And so it's just like, okay, Lord, you're gonna have to make a way. But we're just sensing when she woke up that day and told me, and I said, yeah, we got to go.
They opened up the borders.
But she lost her job.
Wow.
Yeah, he fired me.
He fired her because he could get someone to do both the jobs of the directors for less.
Yeah. But he let me stay working until we left and paid me more than he's ever paid any other nurse. So, so we were able to get a windfall. But then like 2 weeks later, John finally, he has this thing. He's like, we got to go. So in 2 weeks, we weren't even planning, but in 2 weeks, we
got rid of everything, sold things that we could, packed up, rented out our house to people.
And it just happened, just like that.
We get things that we couldn't sell. We just blessed people with. and we loaded up our truck and other car and drove from Alaska down to Florida. And the Canadian border had opened up after the week we left.
Yep.
Wow. So listen, folks, you heard it here. Breaking news. The entire COVID lockdown was to kick you guys out of Alaska and bring you into your destiny in Florida.
That's it. I am so sorry. Next time, we won't do a Jonah act on
yes, exactly.
Be obedient the first time. Yeah, it's just like, fine, okay, we'll move. Okay, we'll go to Nineveh.
Yeah, I was wondering why all that took place, but now we know.
Seeds.
Thank you, Mark, for having us on the show.
Yeah. Long-winded testimony, but that's our. After we got out of Canada, they told you had 24 hours. You could not stop. You could not stay at hotels.
At 40 kilometers an hour.
Yes.
How are you supposed to drive through the Yukon Territory? What a POW, and then halfway through Alberta and get out in 24 hours. You can't.
Yes.
Wow.
It took us 3 days, but by the time we hit, I believe it was the northern Kansas border, the Canadian border shut again. So in less than 3 days after we got across, the Canadian border shut again due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it was opened the week we were traveling through and closed exactly like less than 3 days after we got. And we got to, we were called to the river church in Florida. We weren't called to Florida.
Right.
We were called to the river.
Yes.
We were called, we landed in, we had made arrangements. We didn't know at that time that we could just move without a house. We had signed a year contract on a home that we could find, one of the only homes we could find in Haines City, an hour away from the church. But the rest is history. We landed here. We sowed what we had set aside for rent. Again, as we first came here, I remember Evangelist
Unken was there, and he was teaching on Psalms 60:11, right, where he crowns your year with goodness.
Yeah.
And so that we gave, I just was like, we have to give, we have to sow into this. And so we sowed all of our rent money.
The stand,
and
the
then,
early days.
And at that point, John was like, I'm going to stay home with Marin. I'm going to take her to school, whatever. And he's going to work. So that was our plan. Right. Well, fast forward to all that. This is when it really started, in my mind, I'm thinking we're doing everything the Lord wants us to do. We're just going to be so blessed. Everything's going to work out. It's going to be all rainbows and sunshine, and it's just going to be beautiful. Well, then we have this big, beautiful house, 5 bedrooms. I thought I had arrived. I was like, I have this big, beautiful house, 5 bedrooms, bathroom in every bedroom, pool. What more could you ask for? Except for John ends up with a job with $12 an hour. And I'm like, I can't stay home. And he couldn't get COVID. He couldn't get anything else. And so I'm home for 6 months with Marin. We're trying to figure all this out. Being fed, still learning, being pruned like we've never been pruned before. And it throws me into having to go back to work. And so a lot of all of this stuff, because we didn't understand what it meant to stand on God's word. We were in the process of learning that. We thought that if you just gave, everything was just going to work out. Everything's just going to work out.
There's more.
But there's so much more. And so as we're learning this, as we're sitting under the covering, as we're learning all this stuff, we go into travel nursing. Okay, all that stuff happens. Fast forward to December of 2022. The Lord tells me, at that point, I lost my dad, one of my bestest friends in the whole world, but he's, we know that he's in heaven, all this stuff. Fast forward to where we're getting to where we are now. And that is, I was working 70 plus hours a week. We're a one income family, travel nursing. We really thought our mindset, we're not in Florida. We're all over the country.
Because we're travel nursing all over the country, Missouri, Idaho. And so we're having to
thinking that if we just make enough money and save enough money, we can go to school. That's been our goal, right? We're gonna save enough. We're gonna do all this. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what being a good steward is, and not understanding still what it means to stand on the word. We were missing it. And so we kept trying to do all these things. So I'm just praying, and I hear the Lord say, when you go to Boise, because it was another contract, he goes, when you go to Boise, Idaho, this is going to be a time, this is going to be a season of priorities, getting your priorities right. Because at that point, I was just working, thinking that I was doing the right thing. And then my dad dies April of that year. And that just threw me. I mean, that really messed me up. And so I got off track a little bit, but John here just pressing in, still attending churches online and all, attending the river online and everything. And I hear the Lord, I was like, Lord, there's no way. He reminds me, you raised your hand to be a multimillionaire. There's no way you're going to be a multimillionaire by doing a travel nurse contract. I don't care how well you get paid if you get
still
paid.
Building someone else's
still
kingdom.
Building somebody else's kingdom. And I heard him say, you're still building somebody else's kingdom. And so I prayed, and for 3 months I prayed, and I was like, Lord, I don't know what we're going to do. We need to do something. And so he shows us this business
in financial services
on Facebook of all places. I find it on Facebook, and I'm trying to, like, this is crazy. I am a nurse, Lord. Like, I don't know anything, obviously, about finances. Like, I know nothing. And so I like kind of just put it away. And then every night, as I'm getting ready to close my eyes, he brings it back to me every single night for 3 months. And then I finally was like, okay, I'm going to meet with them. I tell John's like, John's a Mr. Adventurer. He has no problem taking a leap. He has no problem taking his backpack and running. And me, I like my security. And so I really had to learn. I was like, okay, so we go and we do all this, right? And there's total peace, right? Because I've learned, like what Dr. Rodney says, do only what the Holy Spirit tells you to do, nothing more, nothing less. And that's what kept coming back to me. And the Holy Spirit kept telling me, he's like, do it. Call these people, find out what it is, and I want you to do it. So do it.
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of this last travel nurse contract, we're basically gone from the river. The better half of the last half of 2021, we come back for Christmas. Then we hit the road again, travel nursing. We're gone all of 2022 to where we land back in Florida, not wanting to pursue travel nursing anymore, opening up, getting licensed. Shiree gets licensed in financial services. We're trying to land back in Florida. And the rents around here are insane.
So we make this move, right? And we knew, okay, I'm going to quit. My last nursing contract was December. I'm not going to take another contract. I'm totally leaping out. And John's like, are you okay with this? I'm like, yeah, you're going to go to work. I'm going to do this at home. And this is going to be great. Like, this is like, we've arrived again. Like, I have this mindset still. We've arrived. Everything's going to work out perfectly. And had a little bit of savings. And we get to Florida. The rental place was a dive. Like, I was like, I cannot believe we're living here.
This is where John had to learn his own experience about waiting on the Lord, letting him guide your steps and stuff like that. And honestly, Mark, I can honestly admit that I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to make this transition happen for Shiree, a smoother. And I don't know what the Lord would have had for us, but I know what John found. Mm-hmm. And what John found, the Lord actually had to deliver us out of to where we are currently, a lot less. It's literally Psalms 23. It was, I'll lead you beside still waters, in green pastures. You'll lay down in green pastures beside still waters.
What John is not saying is that the place that he found us, I told him, I said, I don't have peace on that, right? So we're learning all of these tiny little things. I'm thinking, and I'm coming out of working 70 plus hours, sometimes even 80, 90 hours in a week. And so coming out of that, and so I'm exhausted physically, right? And the Lord has showed me, he's like, if you would have done what I told you to begin with, you wouldn't have had to work like that. Right. And so he's finding this place. I'm like, he has to take care of everything. Cause if he wasn't there to feed me, I wouldn't have even eaten because I worked that much. And so I lay all that down. We get our license in life and health and start this business. And John, we had a little bit of savings, we get to Florida on Christmas Day, no heat. It was the coldest day of the whole year in Florida. There's no heat there. the place is, it's just, you know, not up to my like love. I hated it. And so there's that. And then it was so expensive. We probably ran out, and the people, unfortunately, Lord bless them, but they were not good landlords. I'd never understood the term slumlord until we lived there, and it was bad. And so, but you know, you have to make the best of it. We were 15 minutes from the church, and who wouldn't want to be 15 minutes from the church? Like I was so excited about that. I'm like, you know what, whatever, we can make whatever work. But what ended up happening is the landlords were so bad that we had to move. And so we moved. And for the first time in my life, you know, we start this new business. And in the first 3 months of starting this business, and the Lord told us to do it. And there was total peace when we started it. And when we started this business, it felt like all hell came against us.
Yeah.
Slumlords.
Every time we tried to be obedient, it was like fights on.
We never, you know, John didn't have the job opportunities that they promised him when we moved back down here. Yeah. And so he had no job. I was learning how to be and to run this business and he was Uber driving. Mm-hmm. We end up, you know, we're doing what the Lord tells us to do. I'm serving at the church. I'm 15 minutes away. I'm so excited. And what ends up happening is we almost get evicted. And then because we couldn't pay the rent, and then it gets to the point where John is Uber driving. It just wasn't enough.
There were health and physical concerns about the property itself too that they weren't addressing.
It was just bad. It was just a bad all the way around experience for that place. I mean, but at the same time, we had no money. Money wasn't coming in. The business was not making any money at all. I'm still learning how to do it, operate it. And our kids literally eating cup of noodles and oatmeal. Like that was the lowest point. As a woman, I was so frustrated and so angry. But what I didn't understand was that we were trying to do it all ourselves. And when we finally started surrendering to the Lord, we're like, all right, Lord, it doesn't matter. Come hell or high water, we are going to serve you. And this is what it means, right? And so I just kept thinking, oh, this is what it's like to be a Bible student. So I better get used to it, right? So then I started contemplating, making, excuses that it's okay. But just all the time, just trying to be in the Word and being submitted and underneath the covering of the river is what really changed us. And so what ended up happening, John, we start making some money, we start getting some movement in our job, and we keep declaring the word and claiming and understand what it means to stand on the word. We're learning that. And then
stop. Let me cut in. So this is all last year. So this is when Dr. Rodney, so we're going in, we're going to have the bleachers up for the conference in January. It's all of that. So I'm volunteering there to help, the last cleanup days to get ready for the conference at the end of January. We're seeing the Lord move in our business. She accidentally made $10,000 in her first month, and still learning to grow in financial services. We're doing our own marketing on social media, trying to understand it and praying and experiencing all these other things. I'm Ubering, able to at least keep a little food in the house and ahead of the rent. And I'm thinking, God, I need to find another place. These people are never going to take care of these concerns. And they just, at every little mention of us moving, they're evicting us. And I thought, you know what, I need a house. And we found another house. And the Lord opened the door for us and we were able to jump. But it was the end of March that we were just starting to get ahead and moving to a new place where I was hit by a drunk driver and it totaled my Uber car. Wow. Car number one. And so this is all in just last year. So
but that's okay because we have two more cars.
Yeah, we had two more cars. A month later, the second car is totaled.
We couldn't make the payments on the cars, but we still had them.
The second month, the second car is totaled. And all along, we're standing and sowing and believing, because in this industry that we launched into, the average person makes about $30,000 a year. In August, we lost our third vehicle. And at that point, we started renting vehicles so I could continue Ubering. And Shiree was having remarkable years. It was right before Dr. Rodney went to Africa the first time. And I remember going out Ubering and praying and saying, Lord, I just need, it's 8 hours in. I've only made $120. I need like a $300 fare to like Miami cash. And within 20 minutes, I get this call from this guy at a hotel going, hey, man, hey, call me on my private number. I want you to pick up my family. And because I'll pay you $300 cash if you just take our luggage down to Miami. Mm. And so we do that. And I thought, Lord, and they were from Nigeria. They were going home to Nigeria. Mm. And I thought, Lord, I wanted to sow into Nigeria. And here I am from $300 cash for Nigeria. And I remember saying, okay, Lord, I'm sowing this. So we sowed. And that month, Shiree had her first $18,000 comma cycle, was what they call it in sales. The next month it was $30,000, and then in November it was a $50,000 plus sale. We were making what we had made annually in a month. She finished as a newbie who was probably in the business for less than 9 months. The Lord blessed us and favored her. We ended up making over 6 figures in less than 9 months. Just helping people understand about money and learn. We're still learning. We're still learning, but what's available to people and how it works. And the Lord has blessed us. And now he's moved us to an even better platform and expanded us to where we have the ability to move internationally eventually. But now we're hooked up with another platform in the financial services, which is more faith-based. It's called, and here we are back in the river, closer, and without even just relying more on God. And I think we're probably hearing and knowing how to wait on his timing and listening for him in the morning more than we ever have before. And
yeah, that's amazing. John, one thing I picked up on with you guys is that there's been a tug of war between faith and flesh. Okay, so in one instance, the Lord says, "So everything you got, and it's no brainer, you do it." And then it's like, okay, but we need to save up to have the money to go and do what God called us to do, And then each time, the as you guys were going back and forth, eventually the faith begins to prevail over the flesh. And now you're in a place of like, okay, we're in more surrender, right? It doesn't look right in the natural. I mean, I've got 3 cars totaled. We just launched into a business that we don't really understand, but we're going to figure this thing out. And that's when all of a sudden the Lord's like, thank God. Like,
finally.
They finally got it, right? It's like walk by faith, not by sight, just go. And the other thing I noticed too is that when the resistance, when you're walking in the way that the Lord tells you to go, is when the resistance comes, right? It's whenever you said it. You said there's the fight, the fight in obedience. So you began to obey, and then the fight came, which a lot of times people would turn back and go into the comfort zone, where you guys said, no, we got to keep moving forward, because this is you're on that threshold of your breakthrough.
Right,
and that's what I see with you guys. And then, so, because I want to get to some good stuff, because I don't want to go like 4 hours, but I love you, love your story. But there is something I want to talk about, because now in faith, now 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you guys are blessed with a brand new car. I mean, let's talk about. I mean, that blows my mind.
So,
you should just leave out that saying that you didn't even believe for it.
I didn't. I didn't believe for the car. I was believing the Lord. I really felt as a husband, like, because of the jobs that I've more than qualified for. I might be overqualified for some of the jobs I applied for in Florida, that left me to Ubering. But I thought, I've missed out on anniversaries. We always seem to run out of money on her anniversary or her birthday or around Christmas. All these things where you're saving up for and working so hard for. I thought, Lord, I just want to be able to bless her. If she wants that car, Lord, you don't need my permission to bless your daughter. And we both put our names in the bucket, but
he
he
didn't. He's like, no, you shouldn't put. Oh, I'm not going to put my name. I'm like, put your name in there. And so I made him put his name in there. But I had a vision. The Lord gave me a vision of me sitting in the white car, like this white car, before there was even white cars up there. And I was like, I know I'm going to win a car because I believe, like, you know, we've been standing on the word. We're learning how to stand on the word, and I'm going to call it in. Like, you know, it's okay. We had to get out of this mindset, and it's what it is. It's a mindset, out of this mindset of thinking that for a long time, I thought, I don't deserve this. I was raised that you had to work for everything that you have. And that if you were given something good, you should give it away. Like, that was the mindset. But when I finally grasped a hold, like Pastor said 2 weeks before, like 3 weeks before that, actually, he said, who's going to grab a hold of this? And I was like, you know what? I'm grabbing a hold of this. I'm literally, I'm trying to stop explaining, to stop being logical about everything and just take God at his word. He said I could have it. I'm going to have it. And what clicked for me was when that gentleman came and he said, it was during a Sunday night service, and he said, you know what? He said, you don't need money. You need a word from the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that like just pricked my heart. And I was like, man, what is wrong with my brain? Because I want to be logical about everything. That's like that nursing brain, right? You want to try to have a rationality a rational for everything. But when I grabbed a hold of the word, I was like, that same night, that's when I saw myself sitting in the car. And every time it would come against me, he's like, well, you already have, like, we have a car, but it leaks. It smells of mold. I'm so annoyed with it every time I get into it. And there was like a leak in the window or whatever. I'm like, no, I can have nice things. It's okay. So finally, to switch that off and to believe that. And so I just started claiming it. I was like, thank you, Lord. For every time I get in our other car, I'd be super annoyed. I'm like, what? Thank you, Lord, that you're giving me a car. John can have this old, ugly car if that's what he wants, but I'm going to have a new car. And thank you, Lord, for it. But then the guilt starts coming in, right? They're like, well, you already have a car. Like, I kept hearing this. Well, you already have a car. You don't need a car. You're just being selfish. But then as soon as I heard that same morning, I went to church. Dr. Rodney said, I got blessed with 2 cars. Some families need 2 cars. Some families need 3 cars. If that's you, it's okay. And so I was like, that's me. And so I was like, you know, I was standing on the word, Mark 11:24. Whatsoever you ask, if you ask believing, it shall be yours. And then, you know, Psalms 5:12, the favor of God surrounds you like a shield or covers you like a canopy, whichever version you like. And I just kept claiming that and kept believing it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and so that morning, when we went to church that morning, John was he was a little bit late. I said, hey, you need to wake up. You need to go take me to I'm getting my car today. Go get up. Let's go. And then we went and knocked on our son's door. I was like, hey, do you want to come see me win my car today? And he was like, yeah, whatever, Mom. And so, and of course he didn't come, and then when we get there, we're there and I'm like, you know, and John's like, don't forget to couple nights before, he's like, don't forget to wear your white shirt, being all like, you know, being sarcastic and stuff. And I was like,
I wasn't sarcastic.
I was like, whatever. And so unbeknownst to me, I didn't even think about it. And we get out the door. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm wearing a white shirt, but who cares? I'm like, it's God, you know.
The week before the lady that won the red car had, you know, the red hat,
the red dress,
the red purse.
So he was making fun of me.
No, I wasn't making fun of her. I said, hey, you better, if you're winning a white car, match the car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's what it was. And so when they called his name, I was like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. And what that did for us, it wasn't just that we won the car, and we are so grateful and so thankful for it. But one of the things that it did is I was like, Lord, you know, before on our way to church, I was like, Lord, because our son needed to know that God answers our prayers, because he's been through all of this with us too, and even more so. But I was like, Lord, show him that you know that you love us, that you are no respecter for persons, that you answer our prayers just as much as you do anybody else. And so that's how it happened. Right. And it really opened his eyes to that. But what it opened my eyes to, and what is a new beginning for us, is like, if you stand, you really don't need, that is such a revelation. You do not need money in the bank. You just need a word from the Lord. And when you, that's everything that's more valuable,
more money
than
the world
anything could ever offer you. And so for me, like that, so every time I walk out the door and I look at that, I told John, I said, every time you get discouraged, you need to walk out the door and look and see the fulfillment of God's word in our life.
Yeah, because God can get it to you. Like, I mean, that's the thing is that, and just so the listeners know that, you know, they weren't at a casino, like for some random drawing for a car. Like, this is from the River Church. Pastor Rodney Howard-Browne is dedicated to give a car away every week for I don't even know how long. But, and it's not just like a used, Nissan Altima. This thing's like Mercedes-Benz and BMWs and Audis and stuff like that. So you guys got blessed with an amazing vehicle.
Yeah, we got a Mercedes GLC 300, and for me, it wasn't even I really felt like when I heard Pastor Marc call my name. See, it wasn't really about the car for me. To me, it was like the Lord was calling my name again, because at that point in time, I felt like I'm just the guy that is slow to obey. I'm the guy that can't buy his wife. I thought, well, Lord, but the Lord said, no. It was kind of like a recall notice is what I felt checked in the spirit. It's like, if they can recall cars, I can recall people. I felt like it was a recall, like everything he had called us to, the visions he has put in our heart for ministry and for business to fulfill in the year of fulfillment during the month of heaps that the Lord keeps telling Dr. Rodney Howard-Browne about. Hammer it hard, get it through the people's heads. This is what write the vision, make it plain, write the list. What is the saying that he says? If what you were believing God for,
how would you react?
How would you react right now? And it's just like, Lord, I should have a list. This was like, faith is just the substance of things hoped for. So you got to have things that you're hoping for, but it's the evidence of things unseen. And now when these things start to appear, like this car, it's just an evidence that God's true. It's like the foundation. It's just like, it turns that hope into faith that gets to work. And this is why I was so excited to hear you have this show that listens to testimony, because it's part of the work of faith. It's part of the action of sharing it. And it's amazing.
And also, just so you know, is it brings hope, because like I was in your situation, both of you, where like we have one car that we rely on, and the other one has no AC. It's old. I don't even drive it anymore. And we'll take it out a couple times, and we've blessed people. Like, if I'm gone for a month, I'll give it away to somebody to use. But it's almost like with an apology letter, like, hey, so sorry the car's that bad, but it is what it is, right? It's better than what you got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
But and then when you guys were, you got that, I was walking by you and I say congratulations. You said, hey, you're next. And I said, well, I can't be, because I never put my name in for it, And then I told Christina, I said, hey, go put your name in for the car. I said, so why should we not? Why should we not? Why should I have some kind of pride that, like, oh, you're, people are going to wonder why you get it because of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, they don't know you. They don't know your story. They don't know what the struggles you've been through. They don't know the hard reality of your life. A lot of times people look at independent, self-employed people and they go, especially like when I was in the restaurant business, a lot of times people looked at me and they thought, oh man, he's got this massive restaurant, they're packed every night, they're well off, we don't need to give to that guy. But in reality, I was the last guy paid, and that's just the way most small business owners are. You have so much overhead that you are the last person to ever take home a check, but then nobody ever wants to give to people like you, because you're like, oh yeah, they're doing really good. We don't need to. We'll give a Pentecostal handshake to the guy who's down and out, but the Seeds family, they're on top of the world right now. You know what I mean? And so the reality of it is that the Lord, He sees your need. Who cares what anybody else sees? The Lord sees you. And He came through for you. And I've been in the same boat you've been in for years and years, where, my wife's birthday's in the summer, our anniversary's in the summer, my son's birthday's in the summer, and it's always the tightest months. I mean, I make a living in direct sales, where in the summertime, people, they're on vacation. you know? And so I get it. I mean, I feel it. And I think that what your guys' testimony does is it brings, like I said in the beginning, like your testimony will set other people free. I mean, you guys have an amazing testimony. This needed to be heard. I mean, wolves and bears and plane crashes and boat wrecks and stuff. Like, I never knew this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. We learned in Alaska not to share our testimony because it's what shunned us from church, where it was really just God closing doors, prompting us to be obedient, to jump and to move, and it's just like, you can misconstrue things in the flesh where you really need, where the spirit had other things in mind, but it's free will.
Yeah. Well, I want to highlight you guys' website too. So let me go here to, I want to pop up your, first of all, there's the link for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's shiree-seeds.mynewretirement.com. So if you're listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio or any of those platforms where you can't see it, that's what it is. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and screen share your site. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube or you have access to the video, this is your site. So this is GFI, Global Financial Impact. So this is the new company that you guys are with now, right?
Yep.
That's correct.
GFI, you'll see in the middle between the G and the F is a cross. The owners and founders of this company are Christian, and they believe that God called them into this industry because of the transference of wealth. $60 trillion is going to transfer hands in the next 6 years before 2030. Wow. And they call it God-favored individuals, even though it's global financial impact.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so let's say I want to get a hold of you. I would go to your site. Here, click you contact Shiree right here. Okay. I'll give out your phone number. Is that cool?
Yeah. That's totally cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 813-922-9883. So if you want to contact Shiree and John about your retirement and get more information on financial services, this is the site. It looks like here if you want to view a webinar, you can just add in your name and email address to view a webinar. So look, these guys are marketplace ministers. All right, so they lead with ministry, but this is the vehicle that the Lord's given them, not only to set themselves free financially, but to set you free financially, right? Yeah. And so now, do you guys take on any partners? If there's people who wanted to partner with you to do work with you, do you do that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely, what I loved about being able to do this is that you're able to bring in new people that know nothing. We can teach you 100% of everything. You just have to be willing to get licensed, pass a background check, and we can take you from knowing nothing to becoming an agent, to owning your own business as well. And what I love about it is that it's not just financial services just for a lot of times people have this misconceived thought that it's financial services is for people, the elite, right? But it's not. Really what we're doing is everybody has a retirement account. Most people do. And 95% of the working population, they have no idea how a retirement account even works. But did you know that if you're in 401k, 403b, TSPs, that 50%, up to 50%, depending on the state that you're living in, is going to end up going back to the government. So what we do is we teach people, one, how that operates, how that works. We educate them. We help them understand it. And then we help them prevent something like that. So that's, if there's an account available for them, we try to help people in that aspect. It's not just about selling a life insurance policy. It's not just about policies. It's about helping people take back their money and not allowing it to go half to the government. Because what ends up happening is, like the 2008 market crash where the market dropped about 48%. What we're teaching people is, we're not teaching people that the market is bad. We're just teaching them your foundation is what's important, right? Just like our spiritual world, our foundation, and how we build that and how we continue to build on it. So we teach people how to take it back, build it so that when they actually do retire, or when they do need to have access to that, we teach them those things. We teach them things like infinite banking, all of those types of things, and how to, pay unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but also don't pay them more than what they need, because what's happening is they're taking back over 50% of that money that people are putting into retirement accounts. And that's just not okay. And when you work your entire life when you go to retire and you end up only with probably 40 to 50% of what you thought you had. It's pretty devastating.
Yeah, there are tax advantage programs in the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code, that allowed for 401k, 403b, TSP plans, pensions, IRAs, Roth IRAs. And then there's also a code called, they call it the Rich Man's Roth. It's the 7702, 7101E, and A. And these are these programs that people don't know, but E.F. Hutton figured it out back in the 80s. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Mm-hmm. And he actually won lawsuits against banks and the IRS to be able to take and attach a little bit of these specialized life insurance accounts to indexes to create all tax-free income.
Mm-hmm. Now, question is because I know that I've had this question where, you know, a lot of times some of these programs, you have to have a lot of money to actually make money, you know. So like, is there like a minimum to get started or anything like that?
No, and starting the program just as a are you saying client?
Yeah, I want to be like a customer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So no, what we do, what I really love, and I will always use this, is we create a one of its kind plan for your one of a kind life. So not everybody's cookie cutter, right? We don't just do the same thing for every single person. So we sit down, we look at everything. Sometimes, you know, because we have to leverage life insurance to do this, you have to be able to qualify through a life insurance policy, but that's
just the open door.
That's just the open door.
Yeah.
So I just created, for example, a plan for a single mom last night who makes $40,000 a year. I was able to help get her coverage for $15 a month.
Wow, so that's amazing. Wow, that's
it's amazing because I'm going to tell you what, at the end of the day, we all know where we're going, but what happens to the people when we leave? What happens to those people that we leave behind? What's your last love letter going to be to your family? Because I can tell you, when my dad passed away, if he did not have the opportunity to sit with people like us because he didn't make anything. He was poor, didn't have any money. So he had no idea there was anything out there. He wanted it, but didn't know how to access it, didn't know how to get it. Wow. And so my passion is really to help anyone and everyone who wants to be able to have that and to leave something for their family. You know, what does the Bible say about leaving?
Yeah, good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
And this is one of the ways that you're able to do that. And one of the ways, for example, the Rockefellers were able to do it. But, you know, a lot of times people don't understand that they don't how to get access to things like this. And so I know people think, oh, they'll be okay. But can I tell you, 3 days after my dad died, my mom lost everything. She lost her home. She lost her income, everything. It doesn't take months and years. It takes a matter of days for that.
They come for you. And what I like about what you just said is that, you know, a lot of people, because I've been in the same boat where you're like, I just can't afford it. You know what I mean? Because your income fluctuates, and there's months where you're making 20,000, the next month you're making negative 5,000, and you know, I mean, it's just the nature of life. And so for years, I've never, you know, pulled the trigger to do anything like that. And because I remember years ago, I sat down with a financial planner, and the guy was like, oh yeah, you got to have like, you know, $700 a month to invest in this thing. And I'm like, bro, that's what I make. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I work in a restaurant. That's all that I make is $700 a month. So that's awesome. Yeah. So we'll definitely have to set up a call and see what you got. So guys, listen, if you're out here, you're a listener today, you know, make sure you connect with John and Shiree. They have some amazing products for you that could really set you free and your future family free. And you know, the Bible does say a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so, you know, this is something that's important that we all need to look into and set up. Nobody wants to think about dying, but we all do, right? So everybody has to go across the rainbow bridge into wherever you're going to go. Hopefully it's heaven, right?
Right. Exactly.
Not everybody gets that path. Not everybody's actually going to rest in peace. You know what I'm saying? So even though we say that, even when the biggest heathens die, you know, it's like, he rests in peace. Well, that's probably not going to happen, you know. But we want to make sure that your families are taken care of. So a couple things. I always ask people this, and so, you know, in like a quick wrap up, give me advice to somebody just getting started out, you know, whether it's ministry or business, from what you've learned. If you could go back in time, talk to your young self, just getting started, what's a good piece of advice that you would give to a younger version of you, or somebody like myself who's just launching a ministry, or somebody who's maybe launching into business? What's some good nugget you can give us?
Number one, that the first script I would say would be the soul saving script. That did you know that God's got a good plan and purpose for your life? Period. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And he's someone you can trust to tell all your plans. All faith. Einstein said that imagination is life's previews to what God is calling you to. That was Albert Einstein and his take on Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. And so that would be kind of my advice, and to dare to dream those dreams you dreamed when you were young. Where you should, I believe, and this is what I feel the Lord checked me on even last week, to the table of the Lord. He goes, you can stay at the TV tray of your complacency and your own thoughts, or you can come to my and self-help, or you can just come up to the table of the Lord that's piled in heaps that I have a reserved seat for you at. You can eat there, or you can stay at the TV tray of your own help. And I thought, he goes, I raised my hand to be part of 300 millionaires. I should have a list of 300 things that I'm believing God to do in the year of fulfillment alone during the season of heat. And I just really felt like, Lord, I need to take action in the smallest details before I can start seeing reactions in the biggest. And here we are in an industry in financial services that makes more millionaires. Not that everyone wants to be one, but it makes more millionaires out of common people by just educating them about how money works. And it's not about life insurance. It's about life while you're still living, and how you can just do that, and then being prepared for the uneventual. And that's what I would tell people. What is your heart that you're guarding? What is it calling you to?
Amen.
Yeah.
How about you, Shiree?
And I would say, get out of your own way. In John, it talks about, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. Pastor Rodney doesn't tell us to stand on the Word because he's just wanting to, waste his breath. Take God's Word at what it is, exactly what it says it is exactly what you can have. And in that revelation to me was in God, that last part, God is the Word. And that is why you can take his Word and stand on it. And that is why his Word heals, and why you can have no money. But if you have the Word of the Lord, that's all you need, because it's him. He is the Word. So every word in that Bible, you take it at exactly the way it says. You have faith like a little child. If I tell you this is what it is, it's what it is. And so when you finally get out of your own way and trying to explain it or make sense of it all, don't try to do that. Just take him at his word. And, and I would say anytime the battle comes your way, you say no, you take that stand. That's what that stand means, is stand on his word and say, no, that is not what the Lord told me. He told me when John talks about the dreams. No, he told me I could have that car. He showed it to me. He told me I could be a multimillionaire. He told me to stand and be one of the multi-millionaires, be a part of that 300, and it's a good thing, because when you sow, and I like when we, he did, when Pastor first said, be one of the 300 multimillionaires, and I heard I heard billionaire, and now Pastor's talking about, maybe not just millionaires, but maybe billionaires.
Oh yeah.
So I'm standing on that word. Have we arrived yet? No, but it's not about the arrival. It's about the journey, and about learning how to stand on the word, and teaching others how to do the same thing. And being able, we can't be a blessing unless we're blessed, right? We hear that all the time. Yeah. And being a part of that end time harvest, that has been my vision from the very beginning. And I knew that my own nursing job, whatever it was, that wasn't going to do it. I needed something faster and quicker. And, but getting in line with God's word, standing on it. And when those things come, because they're going to come. I mean, the Bible talks about it all the time, all of these things that are going to come at you. But like in James, it talks about the storms are going to come, but take heart, because I'm in the midst, peace will come in the midst of those storms. And so I constantly am being referred back. Do I get mad? Do I get frustrated? Do I want to throw tantrums? Sometimes, yes, but then I'm reminded as I'm sitting in his word and I'm reading it and spending that time. So the priority of your day matters. Start your day with the Lord. Start the day in his word, and that is going to direct your whole entire day. That will direct you. That'll help guide you. That'll help you pour out to those that are around you, and it'll help when those things that are coming at you during the day, it'll help remind you instantly, no, that is not what the Lord said. The Lord said this. So that is my encouragement for people. Whatever your venture may be, if God tells you to do it, but get a word. It's so important to get a word, stand on it. So when those things come, you can have peace in the midst of those storms.
Man, that's fire. That is so good. So good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you two coming on here today. I mean, it's was definitely uplifting for myself, and I'm sure for the listeners on the broadcast, that, you know, to hear your story, to see that you've overcome every obstacle that's been thrown your way, from, you know, from the boat crash to the plane crash to even dealing with this, you know, your special needs daughter, and all these things that you know, the giving, you know, living on faith, living in the dumpy house, you know, I mean, these are things that people really can relate to. So I really appreciate your time, because time is money, and I know you guys need to get back to making some money. So bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
And yeah, thanks for coming on to the broadcast here. So wow, what an amazing story with John and Shiree. You know, I got so many golden nuggets out of that. You know, just really the main thing is to never give up. You know, always live by faith, and listen, go all in for the Lord. You know, I could see in their life they had this struggle. You know, between they were going all in on faith, and then they would get pulled back in, right? You know, like the flesh would try to take over, and the more that they've released that. And turn things over to the Lord, the better things have happened to it. Listen, if you like this broadcast and you want to see more broadcasts like that, we can't do it without your support. You know, this ministry is literally a self-funded ministry. You know, we say in our intro that it's brought to you by the partners of Alfano Ministries International. But up to this point, it's literally a self-funded operation. And we know that we can go so much further and so much bigger whenever you get behind it. So if you found any value at all in what you've been listening to up till now, any value at all, please consider partnering with Alfano Ministries International. You can go to my website, The Alfanos, that's TheAlfanos.com, thealfanos.com. On there, you can go to the giving tab. Or you could also do Cash App and things like that. So you can just go right to the website and you can click on the giving tab and partner with us today, because like I said, we can't do it without you. So that's it for today's broadcast. God bless you. And remember, you are one of the 7,000. This broadcast has been brought to you by friends and partners of Alfano Ministries International. Thank you for partnering with us today.